I've clicked go live. I don't know what's done now. I don't know if we're live on YouTube or not. Sorry that didn't work, but it even said, I said start streaming. It said you're gonna go live, like blah blah. You're gonna. I said okay. Anyway, I've tried it. It's what it is. What is it? It is what it is. So basically, what I was saying is the big problem in his thinking, in Johannes Koenraadt's thinking, is that he has a complete lack of knowledge, and we actually all do. Like, to be fair, like, I'm going to be very gentle here, but like, he has a complete lack of knowledge about any of the genetics of Africa. And if you don't have to know anything in great detail, just know that there would have been a massive diversity of hominins that would not be considered modern humans, just like Neanderthals and Denisovans are not considered modern humans. There would have been a massive diversity of them in Africa, and admixture with them. So what we consider modern humans would have migrated down and admixed with them, and there is genetic evidence for that. So here it says, recovering signals of ghost archaic introgression in African populations. In science advances. While introgression from Neanderthals and Denisovans has been documented in modern humans outside of Africa, the contribution of archaic hominins to the genetic variation of present-day Africa remains poorly understood. We provide complementary lines of evidence for archaic introgression. It's like, I think, a more polite word for interbreeding, basically. Introgression into 4 West African populations. Our analyses of site frequency spectra indicate that these populations derive 2 to 19% of their genetic ancestry from archaic populations that diverged before the split of Neanderthals and modern humans. Up to 19% of present day West Africans. They studied 4 West African populations. Obviously, there are so many ethnicities within sub-Saharan Africa, which just makes it so interesting and such a unique place in terms of humans. Like, East Asia is just nothing like that. Like, Europe's really nothing like that. You don't get that much variation, not to that extent. And this would be most probably one of the very good explanations for why it's so diverse. There was different populations of hominin, and slowly over time, on like this time scale, it's really hard to imagine, because obviously populations don't just usually, I mean, that you can sort of sweep, but then it's usually just the men, like a warlike culture, and the men sweep, and then usually rape and mix their genetics that way into another population. Yes, that can happen pretty quickly, but this would have been over time. And 90%, that's nearly like having one grandparent, which would be 25% of your genetics from a different hominin population. And we don't know what they were. There's just not good remains out of Africa, which sucks. So that would be so interesting. So these archaic populations that diverged before the split of Neanderthals and modern humans. That's almost extremely hard to imagine. So modern humans, it's really not a good term, but it is like, it's more like a political term than anything, you know? It's not really a very useful term. But the population that we would derive from the most, the Neanderthals had not even left Africa yet, basically, is what they're saying. Humans would have still basically been within Africa. As in homin, where it gets too complicated. Basically, most hominins would have still been within Africa at that time. It's like with, if you look to our closest ancestors, I shouldn't say ancestors, our closest relatives, chimps, you can sort of see this. They have a huge genetic diversity within very small territories. So they obviously all have their little chimp, territories and tribes. And then there'll be like another one there and like another one there. And within like a few kilometers, they have so much genetic variety that it's like, I was reading it once and it was just like, you'd have to travel a ridiculous extent to have human populations vary that much. They have so much genetic diversity between each other. Da-da-da. Using a method that can identify segments of archaic ancestry without the need for reference. archaic genomes, we built genome-wide maps of archaic ancestry in the Yoruba and the Mende populations. Analyses of these maps reveal segments of archaic ancestry at high frequency in these populations that represent potential targets of adaptive integration. Our results reveal the substantial contribution of archaic ancestry in shaping the gene pool of present-day West African populations. And I think West Africans really, really shape our Western understanding of what Africans are, because they were transported with the slave trade to so many places, and they're like probably some of the most prominent African populations, like probably the most kind of famous people and sports people and things like that that we think of when we think of Black people are going to come from there. Whereas there are other African populations that almost look more Asian, or they look a bit more Arab, or they're really like lean and really tall, like more northeast African, that sort of thing. Yeah, is there any more detail in here? We don't want to get too much into detail, but people are trying to build these these trees. Oh my goodness. In 1,000 years ago, so it's hard to even imagine that. Oh, what does it mean? West African, European. Alright, we're not going to get too into it. It's just going to get way too complex. Let's see what else he has to say, because based on his lack of knowledge of this stuff, which is still being researched, and hopefully there'll be more published about this because I'm really interested. Let's see where he continues, where he goes with his thought experiment.
Or even if they did they perhaps go extinct, and did we evolve from them? I say that out loud because this is the face of a Neanderthal child that they reconstructed. And as you can clearly see, this is in fact true, modern European skulls resemble those of Neanderthal children more than of their elders.
So to that I would say, I just don't know how good these reconstructions are, to be quite honest. Like, how do you know how wide the nose is, like how much fleshy tissue, how the lip shape is, if the hair's curly or straight, things like that. But it seems like people in colder climates tend to have straighter hair, so totally could be that. I mean, they were in cold climates for a long time. They were in Eurasia for a long time before the ancestors of modern humans also entered Eurasia. At least that's the official narrative. But there is this thing that would explain the whole, we look more like the children of them than the adults of them. And it's a thing you see more in East Asia than you do in Europe, which is that there is an evolutionary pressure to look more and more childlike. And it's probably not that difficult to alter human development, to just not maybe go through the later stages of development where your brow ridge gets more pronounced, and I don't know, maybe you get more robust and hairier and things like that. But you can sort of see how it's possible, and we see this with East Asians, like I said, more so, that you get that the more childlike features are retained, and it's not just visually, it's also behaviorally. There's a word for that. I'll think of it. When I think of it, I will just blurt it out because I know it's somewhere. It's somewhere in my head. But yeah, that doesn't mean you're directly descended from them. It's just not a piece of evidence. It's just saying that, okay, we have evolutionary pressure to grow up more slowly, perhaps, and perhaps reach less of that level of maturity as a population.
This suggests a unspoken or unspeakable possibility that perhaps Neanderthals, through their evolutionary history, began favoring youthful features, and that we white people are really the children of the Neanderthals, meaning the youthful period of these beings was.
But yes, it almost certainly is something like sexual selection for more youthful features. that's probably how that happens. But once again, that happened in East Asians more. Like, this is not a piece of evidence. That's like saying, oh, look, Neanderthal children look kind of like East Asians, therefore East Asians are descended from them. What are you talking about? Like, it seems that we all Eurasians have similar levels of admixture from the Neanderthal population, and there seem to always be the same similar genes. So the admixture probably happened quite early. It doesn't mean there wasn't subsequent later admixture as well, but the admixture probably happened pretty early on, and then sort of spread around Eurasia from that population. I'm not saying it didn't happen again over time, but you got to also remember, even if let's say you are a little human tribe and you're like moving into Europe, let's say you're moving through like Germany or something, like where present day Germany would be. Let's say all your women get raped, because it does seem that Neanderthal men mated with the human females. And so you might say, well, now the whole human population of that area is going to be 50-50, right? Like, that would make sense. But then what can also happen is that if the genes are deleterious, if they're not helping you survive, let's say in competition with the other humans around you, either that group will just be pushed, like genetically extinguished, or they will be in turn taken over by the males of a modern human group, and then bam, you can see how that genetic admixture, they might be 50-50, but it will be diluted. Or it can just be that people who have more Neanderthal admixture just didn't have as many offspring, and perhaps that's why it never became like a more common thing to have more and more Neanderthal admixture, where people would have 25 or 30 or 40% of it. It just doesn't seem that was that advantageous. Probably just their ability to do tool use seems really limited. Like, from all that we know, I just don't think we know of Neanderthal technology. They had language, as far as we know, and they would have had fire and things like that. They would have had a lot of things. Obviously, they survived for a long time, very impressive, but their toolkit is very, very basic, and that could indicate that like IQ is probably just not that high, and the low sloping forehead and the brow ridge, and the brow ridge might indicate that there was quite a lot of trauma to the head that had to be survived. That was quite brutish, and the low forehead could indicate that there wasn't that much use of like self-control, emotional regulation, all the stuff that happens in the front of the brain. Maybe they just didn't have a lot of that. Maybe it was a more brutish sort of society, and maybe other parts of intelligence were also lower. It's just hard to say. Maybe they were bigger in structure than modern humans. They had, like I said, they had bigger skulls. They had a wider pelvis to give birth to the bigger skull, which maybe they just couldn't travel well. Maybe they weren't good runners, so that might have given them a disadvantage in like on foot warfare. Maybe they needed more calories. I'm just trying to think. If you have a larger brain, you probably need more calories. Just because you have a larger brain also doesn't mean you're smarter. Like, it just depends how your neurons are also structured, which I just don't see how we would, unless we find genetic evidence for it. Like, we're never going to dig up a Neanderthal neuron. So those are just my thoughts. Let's keep going.
Extended and made us look more human. Whatever you choose to believe, I find it increasingly unbelievable that white Europeans, especially Northern Europeans, are somehow descendants of brown Africans who look like modern day West Africans, which, by the way, is...
So this is exactly, and this is where his thinking actually is correct. We are not descended from modern day West Africans. It's silly. They have so much else going on, so many other genetics going on that we don't even understand, we don't even know about. Adaptations to jungles, adaptations to desert, adaptations to all sorts of things. It's nuts. It's very interesting. And we certainly don't in any way directly descend from them. We descend from a shared ancestral population. At least some of these populations, if they're around 20% different hominins, then the other 80%, we probably have shared ancestry with that. Just like we're saying with chimps, we are not descended from chimps. This is kind of the same misunderstanding. We have a shared ancestor somewhere with chimps. We have a shared ancestor somewhere with gorillas further back, and then somewhere way back, we have a shared ancestor with, birds and things like that. So obviously, it's kind of the same idea, and it is a little bit difficult because you have to sort of think back in time. You think of these converging branches and then map that onto like an actual landscape. It is really tricky, and this research about the admixture in West Africans is, and probably a lot of other African populations too, it's just not that well known. And even the Denisova admixture that only really occurs in Southeast Asia, Papua New Guinea and Australia, even that is just not well known. But like your average normie, they're just not going to know that. But they have a significant admixture of other hominins. And who knows, like maybe Europeans have admixture of different hominins, and we've just sort of taken Europeans as the baseline, and that's why it looks like all these other populations have different admixture, but maybe we also do, and we just haven't like picked that apart. I don't know. It would be very cool to know.
It's impossible, since the earliest humans who would have come out of Africa from the region of Eastern Africa, today's Eritrea and Ethiopia, they would have had a red skin, and they would have had faces that looked a bit more like the Khoisan today, rather than what they usually show you as these thick-lipped, frizz-haired West Africans.
Okay, so he does have some knowledge about it, which is really good, which is cool.
That's complete nonsense. We have nothing to do with those.
Okay, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, but I love that people are having thoughts and conversations about this kind of stuff, because sometimes it's just highly sort of academic and dry, and then looking at a study is one thing, but translating that and integrating that into popular thought, popular culture, and like trending, clipped videos like this is just a whole another job. There's an ethnic map of Africa, and it's just one of those things becomes so complicated. It's just becomes almost overwhelmingly nerdy, but look at it. There's just so much diversity, especially along the west of Africa. You can't see my cursor, but anyway. Arabs obviously conquered. That's why whenever a group is spread like that, it's conquest. It's conquest. The Zulu are right down here. They show a lot of, Kuba, Tonga, Shona, San. They show a lot of these ethnic groups, but then I've seen a map where, I can't point at it, where like the south, almost all of the south of Africa, the south of sub-Saharan Africa was conquered. There was like a massive conquest, and a lot of ethnicities we probably will never even know about, because they seem to have just been wiped out. And that was shortly before Europeans came to Africa. But anyway, isn't it interesting to think? It would be cool to have a map. Obviously, you'd have to wind the map back in time and like kind of track where people's territories were. And I just don't know if we have enough information to even do that. That would be so cool though. Like, yeah, like a video that's like a map where it changes, and then you could see like the spread of different human populations and how they're intermixed. Why don't we have this? Why isn't this a thing? Someone needs to do that. The ghost archaic introgression. Okay, we've talked about this. We're going to move on from that topic. Father Calvin Robinson says, well, he's responding to something, and it said, the Met Police has created a dedicated team of over 100 officers to protect Jewish people in London. So there's now 100 officers just walking around London, walking around certain neighborhoods, I guess, protecting a particular ethnic minority. And then Father Calvin Robinson says, now do one for white working class girls. And it's like, yes, that's a particular subgroup of the population, and we know that they have been targeted with like mass grooming and rape and all these things. So definitely should be done. Definitely should be done. Put the browser on screen. Louise Perry says, oh, this is interesting. It's basically raising the question, are dogs responsible for the drop in birth rates? Like how much of the declining fertility of humans can be blamed on dogs? In the modern era, dogs originally bred to be our sentinels and hunting companions have proved to be very effective at what biologists call brood parasitism. That is, they unwittingly exploit the parental instincts, resources, and care of another species, much like cuckoos who leave their eggs to incubate in the nests of other birds. It's not quite the same, but you can see the parallel here. The American Time Use Survey reveals that the average amount of time spent on pet care has risen persistently in recent decades. Americans are spending less time with their friends, less time caring for elderly relatives, and the birth rate is at a record low. Into this lovely breach, the dog has emerged as a willing receptacle for emotions that might otherwise be directed towards humans. I think there's something true about this. This sounds real to me. You do see people walking dogs. You see people walking dogs a lot more than you see people walking kids, like walking prams and toddlers around. When you can do both, technically, if you want to burden yourself. So much more fun looking after a pet with children, you know? Like, it's actually cute. That's crazy. It's almost like this whole other side, the side of human instincts that's really deep-seated, and we just want to care for something and cuddle something and like make it all cute and nice and look after it. This whole nurturing side of people. Everyone whinges and complains about porn, which sort of addresses the sexual side of people, but what about the nurturing side? Well, that's how much of this is just being taken care of by cat videos and, you know, all these cutesy triggers, and then things like pets that we just invest in more and more and think, oh well, how could I ever look after a person? I can barely look after my animals. What are the like doomer incels up to? This is so sad.
Would be the
I'm
more
not even sure
you
if this is
do,
doomer
or
incel, but
what
anyway,
women
let's go.
will never tell you is that a dude who she maybe only bangs once or twice in her whole life, but she's head over heels in love with him, she will think about that guy year after year after year, compared to you maybe.
So this guy's like cozying up in bed. He's like, hey, fellow men. It's kind of like a fellow whites moment, but it's fellow men. It's like the intention here is to communicate something to other men. And I think a lot of the time when there's male to male interaction, it is a form of aggression and a form of, but like these days it's much more passive aggressive, right? Like there's less actual like sword fights and shootouts. It's more, but maybe this is like what the white man has sort of come to, like, you know, we have just so thoroughly outlawed any physical forms of aggression, what you would think of as male forms of aggression, that men are still feeling that drive, and it's like burning them up inside. And they're like, well, how can I go and attack and diminish other men? And I think this is one of the ways that they do it. He's basically trying to, whisper like the devil on someone's shoulder into other men's ears about how horrible women are, and how it's basically trying to cuck them and like get them to not have, healthy reproductive relationships, which is so sad, and I also think is really untrue. So he's saying that basically women will have like a fling with a guy and then get really, really obsessed and really in love. And I just think, I don't even think this is a male or female thing necessarily. Pardon me, it is so cold. It's gotten so cold. And when I say that, I mean like it's like 10 degrees, which in Australia is so cold. So basically what I'm saying is, it's like linking really, really strong emotions to sex is just a little bit silly when it comes to females. I think that's more of a male thing. Whereas if you're young, you're starting in puberty, maybe you're 12, 13, 14, maybe that kind of age range, that's the time in a girl's life, a young woman's life, when she'll have like a crush that's very intense and like overly emotional, like ridiculous. Like it's not healthy. It's ridiculous. It could be a celebrity. It could be a fictional character. It could be like a teacher. It could be something like that. And that is probably a much stronger emotion than anything that can be induced in a woman through sex. And I find that men struggle to understand that. But I think, don't teenage boys also have crushes? Like, don't they experience that? I can't really comment. But yeah, he's trying to paint the picture, I think, to drag other men down. But let's see what else he says.
Dating her, being in a relationship with her, or even being married to her for 5 or 10 years. You're sitting there thinking that you built up all this relationship equity, right? All of that investment. You're going to sit there and tell yourself, oh, but I put in so much time. I made myself available. I took her on.
So it's this whole, he's basically saying, he's trying to discourage other men from heavily investing in their women. But also, how does that make sense? Like, a relationship is a give and take. It's a tit for tat. There's always an exchange. So how can you pour yourself into and invest and give so much of yourself into a relationship? What does that even mean? What does that... So hanging out with a woman is a loss of time. I can see that, like, if you have a career to chase, if you have goals, other things, if you want to just go to the gym and, like, you know, hustle. But should you be spending time that you don't have if it's actually better used elsewhere on a relationship? Like, it's more of a problem of doing that. It's not really a problem with her specifically, like, you've chosen to do that. But why bring a woman into your life? She's not adding to your life. It doesn't make sense. Is she keeping your life in order? Is she helping you advance in some way, shape, or form? If not, probably not a good idea to be with her. Is she bearing your children? I mean, that's probably the most important thing. If not, why are you together? Like, it doesn't, in the modern way that we structure relationships, it just doesn't make any sense. And then, yeah, people they feel grieved. They feel like they're losing something in a relationship, and it makes sense, sort of thing.
Vacations, we had a great marriage, we were talking about the future. I invested time, energy, love, care, money, emotional effort, resources into the relationship. And you're telling me that she thinks about that other dude who provided absolutely nothing, that she only went on a few dates with?
It's almost like he's painting a picture by naming all the bad things. Well, what's the ideal, you know? I'm not this guy. I'm trying to understand what would be his ideal. So the ideal relationship is where you do all those things, pay for expensive dinners, vacations, spend a lot of time, maybe move in together and maybe pay the rent. I don't know. I get that it's a big financial liability to have a girlfriend or wife. But what's the ideal? That she should worship you in a sexual way? So what? It's like a sexual thing. See, that's already such a mistake. You got to be thinking of a woman as a asset, as a partner in a venture of some sort. Do a business together. Start a family together, raise children together. You should be doing something together, whatever it is. I don't know. Start a commune together. I don't know. It could be a million different things. But the loss of the family as an economic and productive unit puts such a wedge in between men and women, because we're looking at each other. Wait, why am I with you? What's the point of it? If you're not reproducing and you're not doing economic activities, those are the two primary things that a man and a woman should be doing together, and we're not doing them anymore. And that's what's really broken and disturbing, and these people are not even thinking about that. It's the idea, oh, I want a long-term relationship, but she needs to be crazy in love with me and completely infatuated and like having all these sexual cravings for me. It's like, What kind of woman feels like that after the age of, I don't know, 21, 22? For a woman, that's a biologically mature age, and your body just ages out of those kind of feelings. The same way you don't have a teenage crush. You're not scratching someone's name like into trees and like hiding in the bushes, like looking at them. Like you're just not doing that stuff past the age of 16. I think girls completely grow out of that by the time they're 16. Are we going to demand that sort of behavior because, oh, I invested money into this relationship? Like, if you want sexual gratification, sexual access, or the sort of illusion of that in exchange for money, you need to go see prostitutes. Well, that's what it's for.
The answer is yes. And this is the most uncomfortable thing for most men to understand, is that her emotions are opposite to your logic. What makes logical sense on paper would be the more you do, or the more you do for her in that relationship, the more you're going to get in return.
So he's trying to rationalize and make economic sense, which I can't really blame people for, like trying to be rational and trying to, you know, be a little bit clear-headed and stuff. I don't really blame him for this, but it's having those two major pillars of male-female relationships completely out of the picture that then throws the whole dynamic off completely. It actually doesn't make sense. And I would sort of agree. I would sort of agree with this. If you're not doing a business together, if you're not doing projects together, or like even like buying a house together, or, you know, some people making investment, I don't know, or having children, or children being the most important thing, I would say. If you're not doing those things together, well, what's the point?
But the sad reality is that it doesn't work that way. How your brain perceives what an investment is when it comes to a relationship isn't what she considers to be necessarily a good emotion, and she'll just follow her own emotions, which means there's a very high probability or a very high chance that she still thinks about that guy from her past, even though she hardly knew him. She hardly knew nothing about him. Hardly knew nothing about him, didn't even know his goals or his aspirations in life.
Yeah, and I agree. And I also think that there's just a lot of projection in this because, uh, sort of, I think falling quick and hard for someone over sex is more something that men do. The guaranteed, like, good feelings from sex is more something that men experience. And, you know, liking a girl sort of on more surface things. Like, if she's really nice and really good looking, a man might really, really like her, but that's just not really good enough for a woman. Like, we want to know more about a man to be like, oh, okay, you can be nice and good looking, but it's not going to make us like really fall for you. There has to be like status and like the way you interact with other people. And are you going to be kind? Are you going to be a good dad? That kind of stuff. Like, there's other aspects. And I think it takes more for a woman to be emotional about a guy. And besides, all that put aside, even if you took like a girl's the biggest crush you ever had, you know, you were like 15 or something. It could be like the most emotions a girl ever felt. I just don't think that I don't think women reminisce on that. I've never had a conversation where a woman's like, oh yeah, there was this one guy once. The only time you hear that is actually for a marriage. If they were married in a serious relationship or like the father of their children, they will talk about that person. That's the only thing where I've ever had a woman bring the conversation back to a guy from the past. Never to a crush, never to a hookup, none of that. It's just, I think especially, I'm trying to think, I've just never heard women referring to that sort of thing. Not even hinting at it. It's just not in our minds. And also, I think especially once women have children, I think the nurturing part of the brain is so much more dominant, or the nurturing instincts, or whatever it is so much more dominant. I think, um, yeah, caring about the little ones. It could be a niece or nephew or a little sibling, or it could be your own children, especially your own children, of course. It completely fills up our minds and dominates our thoughts and our worries and all that sort of thing. I think that's hard for men to understand. I think fathers can understand it, but if you don't have children, you don't understand. It's really, your mind is constantly bouncing back to your children, and then, okay, what am I doing right now? Oh, and then think you back to is my child okay? How are they doing? What do I need to do for them? All that sort of stuff. It's just a constant thing. I just don't think women are sitting around reminiscing about past romantic encounters. I just don't think that's what's happening at all. And I think that might be more projection from, yeah, and just people who just have too much time on their hands. The strangest thing about cats is that the kill mode is not the first photo, but the second one. I found that really interesting because obviously I was socialized with a cat. We had a cat. And yeah, that second face, you'd better have your arms up near your face. You better be ready. Something's gonna happen. That cat's gonna bounce. That cat's gonna go flying. The first picture is like, the cat's like purring and snuggling up to you and just relaxing. The second face, it's cuter, but it's like kill mode. No gas, no noise, just pure efficiency. This man and his scythe are unstoppable. And in German that is sicher. I did not grow up with the word scythe. Barely ever heard that word. Look at him go. That is like a squat, and I don't know what you call the sideways movement, like lats. You're working out your whole body with that thing. Imagine how fit people used to be. You spend like weeks just doing this during harvest. And the precision, you can't, like, if you give that thing to me, I would just hack it into the ground like an axe. And it would be stuck. I'm pretty sure I've used it and I'm not very good at it. That's insane! There's so much strength, but also so much precision. Like, it's very precise. You can see he's like calculating, like, hey, where am I going to go next with? Like, it's just the most white male activity I can think of right now. And I just really appreciate that. I love that. See, men need to go back to that. Ugh, modern men. So skinny fat. So unmasculine. What the heck? Can't they just go back to this? Why aren't they, like, scything the field? Go back to scything the fields. Pick up your scythe. Go outside. Can you imagine if there was, like, if, like, 10% of women just talked like like the manosphere, but it's just women, like, the mirror image talking points. But legit, this would be very good for men, you know? The New York-based psychiatrist Remy Kaminsky has introduced a new personality structure. New York and the name Remy Kaminsky. Alright? The personality he's named Introvert describes someone who appears social from the outside but needs a lot of alone time to feel normal again. Why is this picture so blurry? What's going on? Is this the 90s? They can talk, laugh, and interact when necessary, but too much interaction drains them. So, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Psychology is such a degenerated science. It is such a joke. If you study psychology in this day and age, it sounds really fun and like, but it's just something, you should just be ashamed of yourself. It's not helpful. Like, most psychological studies cannot be replicated, and it's like one of the worst fields for this problem. And they have like huge departments, huge amount of students, which are mostly female. Not saying that's a bad thing, but sadly, it's kind of indicating I'm in this for my feelings, and maybe I'm not in this for a career. I'm not in this for, like, seriously trying to learn something about the world, because I guess the female brain is less truth-seeking for the most part. And it's just become a joke. It's just awful. So now the So you're telling me there's a spectrum, supposedly. There's a model, right, where you say introvert and extrovert. You have like introvert, extrovert. There's a spectrum. And I guess most people would be in the middle of the spectrum, and then you kind of taper out. And extreme extroverts are more rare and extreme introverts are more rare, right? You would expect like a bell curve. And now you're just labeling the middle of the bell curve where most people are as the introvert. And now all these normies, these midwit normies are going to be like, oh, yeah, that describes me perfectly. I'm an introvert. That's right. I'm a little bit introvert and a little bit extrovert. That's all it means. They're not antisocial. They just recharge in a different way. They strike a quiet balance between being with people and preserving their own energy. So you're just in the middle between introverted and extroverted, which some people argue is not even a good scale and a good measure. But for what it is, at least it's something that's vaguely understood by most people. You're just in the middle. No one's saying you're introverted or extroverted. No one's saying it's a dichotomy. I thought we have moved beyond dichotomies. What is going on? So stupid. What a joke. Sikko Bilim says children fed with breast milk are for more than 6 months become less hyperactive and also have better impulse control. I take issue with this study, and I have a good kind of counter theory, but for what it's worth, never breastfed, and then it's like the mean hyperactivity rating by mothers. Okay, so it's self-reported, like it's reported by the mothers as well. Breastfed for less than 3 months, breastfed mean hyperactivity ratings. But in this graph, it goes up. Breastfed 3 to 6 months is higher. Breastfed for more than 6 months, it goes down quite a lot. And then down here, mean inattentive ratings by mothers. Pardon me. Sorry. It's just so cold. Never breastfed less than 3 months, and then the mean inattention rating by mothers goes down. But the issue I have with this is how much of the weaning was initiated. It's kind of, you could say, well, the breast milk is inducing a change in the child. Okay, more breast milk or breast milk for a longer time made some change in the child. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not saying it doesn't affect anything. I'm sure it affects a lot of things. Microbiome, brain development. I'm sure there are things it affects. But then his issue is a lot of babies, when they're breastfeeding, they will start moving and turning their head away and start looking around. And some children are much harder to breastfeed. So children who are inattentive and hyperactive are going to be harder to breastfeed. So you're kind of getting this, the result is just showing what the result is. It's just reinforced. It's just a circle. There's no outside factor in this. And also, since ADHD is highly heritable, a mother who is, has less impulse control and maybe less of an ability to sit still, because breastfeeding involves a lot of sitting or lying still. It's very, very hard. And it takes a lot of willpower from women to breastfeed babies. And women who are quite highly ADHD, I would not be surprised if they struggle more with breastfeeding for a long time and are gonna go to bottle feeding more quickly. Oh, something's wrong, I got a breast infection, this and that happened, oh, the baby's not latching properly, look, I'm just gonna bottle feed. Are ADHD moms going to be the moms who have the persistence to be like, I'm definitely going to breastfeed no matter what, that was my goal, even if it's really hard, even if I have to sit still? No, they're not going to be the ones to do that, and it's highly genetic. So those children of those more ADHD inclined moms who might, in my opinion, be more likely to cease breastfeeding earlier are going to be much more likely to have ADHD. Anyway, just from a genetic basis. So I'm not even convinced that breast milk has any impact on this. If it was autism, that would be different. I'd be interested in that, because obviously there's a lot more gut microbiome problems also linked to autism. I'm 23 years old and my clitoris is completely numb, like the back of my elbow. I can't orgasm, blah, blah. I read this and I thought, I thought, oh no, not again. It's one of these transitioning stories. I was like, oh gosh, what have they done to themselves now? And there are a lot of those sort of stories. But it's not. It's not a trans story. It's a post SSRI sexual dysfunction. A girl who suffers with this, a young lady who suffers with post SSRI sexual dysfunction, which is something I've heard about. And it's very interesting because SSRIs are going to affect a lot more people than transgender, cross hormones, or surgery. So let's have a listen to what she says.
Stopping the medication. Next, I'm going to go to you, Lauren. You're going to talk about another part of, withdrawal is something that people aren't warned about, but there are some effects don't just last during the treatment or when you get off of them, but they could last long after stopping the medication. PSSD, SSRI sexual dysfunction, is something many people still have not heard of or are told it's not real. What is PSSD, and what has it been like to be living with this and living within a system that doesn't even fully acknowledge your life experience?
Yeah, so I'm living with a condition called post-SSRI sexual dysfunction. Sexual dysfunction is one of the most common and reliable side effects of SSRIs. In fact, 50 to 70% of all patients taking these will have sexual side effects, but patients are not.
That's insane. Obviously, people were not warned, or maybe it's only now becoming part of public discourse to actually warn people of this. That is terrifying and insane.
Not warned about is that these side effects can be permanent long after you stop the last drug dose. And PSSD is not just low libido, it is a full nervous system injury in which you lose total sexual function neurologically through essentially nervous system damage. So the hallmark symptom of PSSD is genital numbness. Yes, like complete loss of sensation in your genitals. For me, I clearly hate to talk about this, but my clitoris is completely numb as if it's the back of my elbow. I have no sensation internally. I'm 23 years old. Sufferers also lose the ability to orgasm permanently, like for the rest of their lives, and their libido entirely, which for me and what a lot of other people experience is like a sudden onset, like chemical asexuality that just never goes away. And in my opinion, I don't think it's sensational to say that this is a form of chemical castration, that it is permanent. But beyond that, PSSD is not just a loss of sexual function, but a loss for some people of emotional function as well. That has been the case for me. Before this, I was a super emotional.
I have to sort of pause because there's so many things conflated, and I always wonder about this. To me, that sort of just raises questions around how much of sexuality is about your nervous system, your sensations. How much of it is about your mindset? Like obviously testosterone is going to induce sex drive, but also aggression. So that's linked. It's like sex drive and aggression are really hard to pick apart. I don't really know if we can pick that apart. Does the SSRI somehow affect testosterone levels? I don't know. She's saying it's affecting the nervous system. Because obviously it's meant to affect the brain, and there's neurons in the brain, there's neurons in the nervous system. So that makes sense that they would do that. But numbing him, like, do SSRIs just sort of numb your brain? You're like, oh yeah. I think that's what it is, right? You're just sort of like, oh yeah, I'm just sort of neutral to everything now. I'm not sad anymore. I'm just sort of nothing. But then sometimes I think if you're sad, maybe it's better to convert your sadness into anger. They say, anger always comes out of sadness. Maybe sometimes it's better to be angry and then to be motivated to do something. Do something. But when you're doing SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, you're sort of just saying, nah, I'm actually going to stay in the environment that's complete mismatch to my biology. Or I'm doing something that my body cannot cope with. I hate it. I'm in an environment where I'm at the bottom of the social hierarchy and everyone excludes me. Why would you stay? Look around, look around the world. There are so many cities, there are so many people. If you're feeling bad for social reasons, like you're not accepted, you are frowned upon, just walk away. Just leave that place and go to a different place and really try hard to start over. I honestly think that a lot of people who become extremely depressed and kill themselves just need to change their environment. I'm not being like, oh, I'm not trying to be flippant. Like, I get that it's severe. I get it can be induced by different things. I'm not saying that. But also diet, health. I'm really, really not dismissing depression and bad feelings. But telling me you don't feel better after exercising, you're telling me you don't feel better after going out and talking to people, new people, different people that don't hate you. You say you don't. I find it sometimes hard to understand. Is there nothing that you can hold on to in life that can pull you up? Get a pet that you really like. Is there nothing? I can think of so many things that make my day feel worthwhile, that make my life feel worthwhile. So many things. There's like 50 things. Even like cooking a really nice meal. But is it just people feel so helpless to do anything? But you're not. You've got to see yourself as more of an agent in your own life. I guess what I'm saying is don't even go on SSRIs. Okay, that's like the shorter message here. Except if you are literally on the verge of killing yourself and you cannot do anything else. Maybe go on them so you're not going to die. But then this might happen where honestly, what are you going to do when you're damaged? Your body is so damaged. And part of me, because I do like Puritanism, I find it a very attractive philosophy. And so the idea of minimizing any pursuit of, I guess, sexual pleasure, but other pleasures as well. Like minimizing those things in your life as much as possible and maximizing like useful work. That I'm a big fan of. But that doesn't mean that sexual gratification, like sexual pleasure, doesn't make you maybe regulate you in some way, regulate your hormones, regulate, I don't know, tensions and stress and things like that. It might be a really important thing for people to be able to regulate in that way. So I feel extremely sorry for her.
Empathetic, loving, caring, like Sylvia Plath reading and resonating girl. And the day I woke up with this injury, I quite literally felt my soul leave my body. Like, I'm so serious. It was the most unbelievable, inorganic thing I've ever experienced, and it's a common symptom of people who have this condition. To this day, it's been years for me. I'm 23 now. I can't feel love for my own mother, which is the hardest thing on earth. I can't feel connection or love for my friends, or even pleasure in music, which was the bane of my existence. I was a songwriter since I was a child. It was my outlet. And it's been completely neurologically severed from these medications. And I just like to say there's a reason that, you know, every song on the radio, every movie on your television, every piece of art since the beginning of humanity centers on sex and love. And not just romantic love, but platonic, familial love. And that is because these are the most central, intoxicating, worthwhile, and fulfilling parts of the human experience. These aren't luxuries. And to remove someone's ability to participate, not just physically through sex, which is completely horrific on its own, but to remove someone's ability to emotionally connect with another human being is a crime against humanity. And I say crime against humanity because there is evidence that Eli Lilly, who created the first SSRI, Prozac, knew their drugs could cause permanent sexual dysfunction and emotional numbness in children especially. And they withheld this from the public because they knew it would be a threat to the bottom line. I mean, I hope I'm not the only one who believes that there's nothing more criminal or dystopian to withhold from patients and parents of patients that your medication can permanently chemically castrate and emotionally numb its user for the rest of their life.
Yeah, that is so terrifying, because what do you live for? Like, what do you get motivated for? I mean, what do you get up in the morning and pack your bag and go to your work or education. What do you do it for if you're not doing it for your love of something? Even if it's a project, even if it's not a person, a project that you're doing, something you're excited about, or people, you know, trying to make your parents happy, trying to impress a potential, you know, romantic partner. I mean, it's really, this stuff is not just about, oh, you have work and education and then you go home to it. No, like that's what motivates your whole day, male and female.
PSSD is not on the drug label. It's not even in the fine print. I quite literally had no way of knowing that this was possible or that this could happen to me. The FDA actually received a citizen's petition from sufferers in 2018, begging the risk be added to the label, and it was completely ignored. I took Zoloft in 2022. If this correction was made, I would have had full informed consent. I could have chosen an alternative. I would have been spared from the most inorganic, inhumane suffering I could have never imagined. I mean, we think these parts of us are immutable, and I'd argue that they are, but when you introduce a chemical agent so, like, perverse, these things that are so central are able to be removed, and it's horrific. But what makes PSSD so torturous is that we've been blindsided, betrayed, and maimed by the industry that we were told and instructed to trust, and we trusted fully, given we took these medications. And now we've been offered no way back to our lives or humanities.
Really like a zombie thing. If you think of like a zombie is just like, must do this one thing and has no more love for, you know, their children or parents, or like no other desire. Like, yeah, it's like, it's very, ooh. I guess you could go into some sort of conspiracy theory about why would you mass release these drugs and market them that make people almost not human. That's insane. And I really hope that this woman finds some sort of healing and can get better. Maybe neurons can fix themselves in some way. It's horrific. Alexander Dugan is still crushing out, and we're nearly at the end of this show. It's just this continuous stream of just unhinged posting. I'm more white than almost all of you. I'm Indo-European, in brackets Aryan, and proud to be it. You are wrong, Aryans. It's just gotta be rage bait. You are wrong. You're the wrong kind of Aryan. You're wrong, Aryans. Liberal, weak, pervert. You are modern. But also, you are modern. Like, we are all living in the same times. You're telling me, like, you're not using modern technology in Russia? Like, what do you mean by that? You're telling me as a society progresses, it's like we are progressing in one direction and obviously you're not, is what you're saying. So then as your society progresses, will you also go down the same route? Like, is there another choice? Would you get stuck in time? What are you gonna do? Like, we're trying our best, honestly. Yeah, it's hard. Everything's changed. There's machines for everything. A lot of people's labor has completely disappeared. A lot of people's ancestral professions. I mean, what's your last name? Baker, whatever it is. All the Fisher, all those names. Well, you can't exactly go and work as that necessarily anymore. Fletcher. Thatcher, right? Like, Thatcher is like the binding the straw to the roof. Like, you can't go and be like, I'm gonna be a Thatcher. That would be cool, right? Like, I'm gonna like that job. That'd be great. Oh. Technology changes and you have to adjust. What do you expect people to do? You know, the thing is also, and I don't think that these conservative traditionalist type of thinkers really address this. So here's the point, okay? Ready? By going through these bottlenecks, like what we are currently going through, we are just right smack bang in a bottleneck of a population where obviously birth rates were really high and it's getting lower and lower. Like, people are literally, their whole family is going extinct or massively reducing, and this is everywhere you look. I mean, almost everyone you talk to, they've got like one or two siblings. maybe 3. And then of all those siblings all together, like let's say they're in their 40s or 50s, they will have each had maybe 2 or 3. And that's already a high fertility family. Most families, there'll always be those kids who don't have any. And then there are families where I have old people who come up to me and go, oh, your child is so cute. Oh my goodness, so chubby. And then they really sadly say, oh, you know, my children have told me, like, sorry, mom, or sorry, dad. They're either, they're usually just working. They're usually just normal people who work, and they're just saying, sorry, like, I just don't feel ready to have a child. I'm just probably never going to have a child. Or they're with a partner and, like, one of them is infertile. Usually the female is infertile, so that's also something. The old people always tell me this. I'm constantly having these interactions the same. It's almost like a script, but it's not. It's just real. Or they have, like, 1 or 2 grandchildren from one of their children, but then the other children don't have children. Or their children are, like, gay or lesbian, something like that. So that sort of seems to be I mean, it is very real. It's a very real thing. Talk to any boomer. Like, how many of them have more than, like, 3 or 4 grandkids? Not many. Some do. Some definitely do, but not many. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is I'm trying to paint the picture of the bottleneck, like the population declining. But it's not like everyone's randomly just reducing. Like, we're just the same population, just fear of us. We were a bigger population, now we're going to be a little bit littler. Like, it's not what's happening. What's happening is some lineages are expanding, some are maintaining themselves, and a lot of lineages are falling away. And so there is a massive genetic pressure. It's actually a massive evolutionary event. And I would argue, and this is sort of trying to be a white pill, that it could be seen as, well, these new technologies sweep through our societies, become widely adopted. I'm talking about mainly contraceptives. You could say like AI and Bitcoin, but that's too recent to really see the effect yet. Smartphones is probably a huge one. Social media is a huge one. Short form video content is probably a big one. I don't think we know the effects just quite yet in terms of intergenerational. But washing machines, like stoves that just turn on, you're not having to light an entire fireplace to cook your breakfast. I mean, that's crazy. Like, we had women getting up at the crack of dawn, like lighting the fire or like maintaining the fire, you know, doing all these things. Maybe they went back to bed for a bit, I don't know. Life was a lot more difficult. There was just a lot more mental burden in a lot of these little tasks and chores. And as you change the technology, you're changing the sort of person who can actually survive and thrive. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, we're getting better. We're not getting better in terms of what I prefer. I'm not saying humanity, like Western white people, are becoming more and more to my preference. It's not a personal thing at all. But look at the technology. Who can survive it? Who can be exposed to porn and at this point, young adults have been exposed to porn at like 10 years old. I'm talking young. And still have children. Who can have abortion available and choose not to use it and still have children? Who can have an expensive environment? Everything's expensive. A car's expensive. All the insurances are expensive. Obviously housing is the big thing. And still somehow make it work that they have more than 1 or 2 children. Who can do that? Well, those people, whatever they're like, whether you like it or not, some of them are just going to be high achievers, high earners, wealthy, and intelligent. And we know that in the data, it does show. And some people are just going to be completely different than, you know, maybe very much lower class, maybe completely on welfare, maybe just not caring, not even thinking about those things. Some people, who knows? It's going to adjust our population to be able to handle those technologies and those things being available, and also the cultural environment, and still be reproductively fit. And if you put your people in a bubble of, oh, we're going to ban this media, we're going to outlaw this. And I'm not saying Russia shouldn't ban porn and things like that. I totally would not mind if that was done in our countries. But at the same time, I'm just saying, you are still preserving those genes within your gene pool that cannot handle it. You are preserving genes within your women that cannot handle social media. You are, if you ban social media, or you ban, like the way they in China, I guess they try to control that stuff. If your young men and young women can't handle being exposed to porn, so you're banning it, so you're maintaining those demographics that actually can't handle it. So it's just a different route, and it's a different, I think we should embrace that there's different approaches to this. I'm not saying everyone should go the same route at all. I think it's great that different parts of humanity choose different ways of dealing with these things. I looked at China, okay, too much censorship, too much authoritarianism for my liking, but I can appreciate that they think, okay, well, this sort of media is having a deleterious effect on our young people. Oh, these computer games, the kids shouldn't play them after a certain time at night, they need to sleep. I can appreciate their care. They treat their whole population more like an authoritarian family structure, which is what they're evolved to be in, basically. And we very much don't. We are very different. That's where East Asians and Europeans are very different. We are like, oh, there's this new thing out. You can play video games all night long. Okay, some families are going to do that. Some families are not going to do that. The families who do that, I guess their sons will have no success in life. Or maybe they will. It's like, it's more letting nature take its course, and that I can appreciate this about white people, and no one is out there appreciating white people for our attitude of a little bit laissez-faire, a little bit, let's see what happens. You want to play computer games all night? Hey, if you're smart and you're a genius and you can pull yourself together by the time you're like 21, maybe, okay, you play computer games through a night, you've messed up your hormones, maybe you're a little bit fat or something, but hey, maybe you've learned something, maybe you've learned about, you know, the workings of programming, and now you can have a really good career. Maybe you're so into this whole world that then you can work in like game development and things like that. I mean, you don't just not ever play computer games and suddenly work in those fields. It's not going to happen either. So I think, or even let's say you're just playing computer games and you never ever have a career that's anything to do with any of those skills. Like you do end up being like a bricklayer. Maybe you've just played so many computer games and you were sleeping through your school lessons, or like not really being attentive to school, or not really attending school. Maybe you avoided a whole bunch of, you know, hysterical leftist lecturing at school. Maybe you were such a low performer because you were up all night playing computer games that then you didn't go to university and didn't get indoctrinated and learn, you know, all this extreme leftist nonsense. And maybe now you're just an adaptive human being who just does a job and comes home and has a wife and children because really you avoided all this LGBTQ questioning, all this refugees, all this stuff. You know, I do think it kind of creates a bubble for young men to escape out of, I guess they call it like hyper-feminized society, but I'm not really comfortable with that term, but let's say very, very leftist institutions. They can just withdraw it to their own world, and that's maybe a good place for some of these kids as compared, I mean, what's the alternative? Public school? It's terrible. This kind of whiteness is a shame, says Alexander Dugan. Real whites are Iranians, Indians, and Avolians. All the rest is thrash. And I think he means trash. This makes me think he's actually typing it in English, trying to say it in English. It's not even auto-translated. It's not even like AI translated or something like that. And the comments are hilarious. I mean, it's true. It's true that there is this sort of broader ethnic group that used to be called Indo-European or Aryan, and that spans through sort of where Iran is, and then all the way down to India. And then there was sort of, in India there was like an admixture. They were natives there, and there's different degrees of admixture. So he's not like entirely wrong, but saying that we're the wrong area is just a bit ridiculous. We're just like one extreme of Indo-Europeans. We're like, or Caucasians, I guess is what people usually will call it. We're just one extreme end of that, you know? We're just the little bit quirky, nutty end of it, and then there's like the center, and then there's the other side, which is India. Oh dear. And people are putting the memes. Oh my gosh. It's so. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna close that now. Defund simping says that look maxing is for white people. Do you agree? Says the Riz Bible. This is just
Therefore,
weird. But it's also, I love. I'm gonna use this to comment on like the way the way black people do rhetoric and explain their thoughts is always legitimately really fascinating. And a lot of time I will agree with them, but it's just fascinating the way they lay it out. It's so different to the way that like I would lay out an idea.
hot take, the looks maxing community is for white men. I said it. Statistically speaking, white men have the most pull in the dating world. All races of women, all of them are attracted to.
But that's not proving your point. That's like saying, oh, because rich guys have more access to women, therefore looks maxing is for rich guys. Doesn't make sense. Looks maxing would be for those people struggling who need to improve, who are like, okay, I need a good feature that's going to make me more attractive to women. Like, what are you talking about?
White men. Yes, there's some women who've never dated a white man, but statistically speaking, white men do the best in the dating game. Therefore, when a white man gets super attractive, he ends up pulling all the races. But if you're a black man trying to looks max and make your eye.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. This is like the last thing. But legitimately, it's very fatiguing. It's actually a massive mental exercise to follow the reasoning of some of these people. White men are the most attractive to women, therefore trying to look better is for them because then they can have sex with all races. What? So they already have access, so wouldn't they just be relaxed? Doesn't make any sense.
Eyebrows thicker or get super chiseled, you're just more attractive to black women and other women who already found you attractive.
Well, no, you'd arguably be more attractive to any average woman. What?
Because I know for a fact there's a black guy watching this that tried getting into looks maxing thinking that if he got hollow cheeks and all these cool looks maxing features, white women would start to find him more attractive.
Okay, now that's what it's really about. So he tried the looks maxing stuff. And white women are still like, nah. Like they look straight past him. Because I guess a lot of white women have a filter where it's like, they would not date a black guy, even if they're not going to overtly say that. But a lot of white women might not. But it does seem to be much more common than people admit. Because the intermarriage rates of white women are like the lowest of all groups. Like it's the lowest. Asian women go with white men. Think of any other group that has really low intermarriage rate. Maybe some Muslim groups where they historically have like arranged marriages and they have very specific and strict culture. And maybe some groups of Indians where they also have that arranged marriage within their caste and things like that. They might be like even more true to their little group. But white women, I do think they just see men through a filter. Like if you're not white, or at least adjacent, like passing white, you're just going to be instantly not even considered. Your looks are they're not even important.
And when it didn't work, he's like, damn, what was all that work for? In conclusion, unless you're white, you can't looks max yourself into being someone's type. If I lost more body fat and got more looks maxing features, I'd just be more attractive to the girls that already found me attractive.
But I think that is also kind of true for each kind of category of man within, yes, white men have different dating dynamics than black men. I think that's really, I think once again, this is where I end up actually agreeing with him here. I wouldn't phrase it the same way. I think he started off on a weak note, but oh, sorry, my brain's just a little bit fatigued. Pardon me. It's like, here's the thing, and this is going to apply to all men, right? It's like what he's saying. You can adjust your body fat, be a little bit more like this, a little bit more, have a facial structure that's a certain way. For women, looks are just not that important. They're important, but status is going to be much more important. And I do think, without judging where he's from or anything like that, African Americans are a low status group within the US. They're a low status group, socioeconomically low, and that's probably one of the main factors that's going to cause women to completely overlook them, and also just maybe just there's an attraction to like the wasn't that in last night's stream? Is it homo something, and it's like attraction to people who are similar to you. Remember that? It was like people with dark triad traits are attracted to other people who also have dark triad traits. A lot of it's just that stuff. Is people are not conscious of that. They're certainly not going out going, I want someone who's similar to me. They're just naturally drawn. It's just like a comfort, a relaxation when you're around someone who's similar to you. And a lot of it is just that. But yeah, as a man, what are you going to offer me? Oh, you have the perfect body fat percentage. How's that going to change my relationship with a man? I'm not talking about black or white here. I'm just talking about a man. You're going to maximize some little aspect of your appearance. How's that going to help me? Because at the end of the day, the man is providing resources, and all the gestation of the baby is happening in my body. Actually, my body is important. The way if I'm healthy is important. If my immune system's right is important. The man provides genetic material. Your genetic material has to be okay, but like maximizing some aspect of fitness or trying to look 21 versus 27, women are just not going to care. Not going to care very much. Clavicular, he has really high social status now. That's what you got to remember. Don't think that the women are like at him like leeches because he's so attractive. We don't really see that, and we don't really care that much as women. It's status.
Which is black women and Hispanic women.
But overall, good point, and I agree with him. All right, everyone. This is it. Good night.